All right, guys, this is a video from Chip's Butler service on how to rebuild a 435 Butler cat pump. This pump actually came out of a 2007 unit and with right at this point unknown hours, but everything came off the top. Uh, this port here that has the pressure gauge and the pulsation dampener. This came in without a pulse pump, and so that was already out. And just trying to get started here. Try to keep it short and simple, but still want to try and cover all the bases. These nuts right here are 13 millimeter, either side of the discharge manifold. That's what this is, discharge manifold. So 13 millimeter, we'll take those apart right now and get into it. All right, so I've taken the nuts off, and sometimes you want to pull everything off with the cylinders, just like that. So making sure the cylinders stay in the head, and there's a reason for that. It keeps everything, the discharge valve kit and the seals and whatnot, keeps everything inside there, so that can be inspected when you go through and start replacing parts. I should also say, besides the 13 millimeter, you're going to need a 10 millimeter opener box end, doesn't matter, for these 10 millimeter nuts here on the end of the crossheads. And then small pair of needle nose pliers to take and fold this down out of the way. This little cotter pin has to come up through there. And maybe a crescent wrench or two, but that's pretty much it when it comes to disassembling all this. Okay. Oh, and a small screwdriver, flathead, just so you can fold that down out of the way. And as I'm disassembling this, I take and keep all the parts. Even if they're older parts, you just want to keep them. The rebuild kits come with these little cotter pins, but you don't want to have one, you don't want to misplace one, lose it, or break it. If it breaks, then you got a problem. So I try to keep the old ones anyways for a minute. So these little 10 millimeter nuts, you just screw off the end of these crossheads, or pistons as it were. Notice I haven't taken these out yet because these have to come out first. These are the hot cups. This is what builds the pressure, draws the water in, and pushes it back out through the discharge manifold. And if you run your cat pump dry, especially after a long run, you're on a commercial job and you run out of water, you see how that's separated? That's not supposed to be that way. They're supposed to be hermetically sealed or whatever from the manufacturer. They're tight. So that one's blown. Just rotate the pump a little bit to bring up that second one. That one's blown as well. So this thing ran dry. This is the inlet valve. Now these can be flipped. If it's never been rebuilt before, the back side is not even used. Just want to clean it up with some emery paper, and then these can be flipped. So if you, there again, saving all the parts, you can reuse those in some cases. Not always, but in some cases you can. And this hot cup here that is underneath the pulse pump manifold where that normally screws in, this one is completely blown. I've seen them so bad that there's actually chunks missing out. Chunks from the rubber, or this, whatever that is, has been blown out, and there's actual chunks missing out of it. But that's shot. So this pump will get a hot cup kit, a discharge valve kit, an inlet valve kit, and a sleeve and seal kit. And so now we'll take these off. And I can tell when a pump has been into by an inexperienced mechanic or backyard mechanic or whatever that doesn't know the way around it, because sometimes these lock washers will be on the inside here, and they're supposed to be on the inside of these bolts. Okay. Well, same thing applies. Obviously, you have to keep these. And then the inlet manifold comes off. Now back here are the inlet seals right here, and you can see a little bit of a water line. So it's positioned this way. You can see a little bit of a water line. Not bad, but these seals are a common problem. When they go out, you'll start dripping a little water through here, and you'll see a water ring or a water drip there. And so I'll pop these out and replace them with brand new ones, and I'll clean up all this brass and try to get it back to shiny again. So these are oil seal keepers. That's what I call them. And then here are your sleeves. Now you see the this sleeve here, you can see that it's all scarred up. If you look, there's ridges on that. So that this pump has been starved for water, which is evident by the hot cups. But when it's starved for water, there'll be real sharp scores in this sleeve. Now these will get replaced in the sleeve and seal kit, but that's not good. And because of that, it will wear the inside of your inlet sleeve or inlet seals. So there's the one that was under the pulse pump. Here's a second one. That's not too bad. There's some scoring on the bottom side. Not so bad, but it shouldn't be there. Here's the third one. That's not so bad. There is some definite scarring there. Okay, these little rubber O-rings, these will get replaced. Come in, new ones come in the pump rebuild part. I do keep these, but I never reuse them. I just try not to lose the brand new ones. Now I'll look down inside here to the back or the front of the drive end of the pump and make sure that there's no oil leakage that usually will run down the face of this that you really can't see, except for every once in a while you'll have to throw some oil in your cat pump because you look in there to check the level and it's down. So that's where typically where the oil will leak is down underneath here where you can't see it. And so here's something that's really, really important. This determines whether or not whether or not your rebuild of the cat pump is gonna stand the test of time. Now, they call them cats because you rebuild them, more than 9 times, assuming the drive-in is good. But what I'll do is I'll pull this all the way out to its farthest extended point, and I'll wiggle it, try to push it back and forth. Same with the center. That's good, and the end one. That's good. If you don't hear any clacking or clicking and there's no movement back and forth, not necessarily up and down, but back and forth, then you know you got a good drive end. All right, this is good. So this pump is good to go for a rebuild. So I'll take off the clutch. I'll take off all the stickers. I'll clean it all up really good, paint it, and then I'll start replacing the parts once all these other parts have been cleaned and shined up. So then the customer or even yourself, you'll know that the pump is nice and clean and it's operational, obviously, for all the parts that are going in it. And so let's take a look at this discharge manifold. So I'll hold these cylinders to a point where I can inspect and make sure there's no scoring inside or any steps. I'm trying to describe what steps mean. That's a whole nother story. But I mean, it should be nice and smooth inside there. Yep, those look good. That one looks good. That one looks good. All right, so down inside here, this is a brass spacer, and it goes in that cylinder, and the pulse pump sits here, remember, okay? So the pulse pump sits on top of here. This brass spacer in this port right here is way different than these other two in terms of the parts that go in it. So this brass spacer, sometimes it will sit there and chatter, and it'll be, I don't know, considerably smaller than a brand new one. And I'll show you in a minute what a brand new one looks like. But once you've taken that apart, it's important that you look. It's important that you examine this inside wall really good. And make sure there's no scoring inside of there. Because if there is, when you go and rebuild it, and hoping that the pulse pump, your chemical system is going to work again, if that's scored, then it should be replaced. But there's an element to where, there's an amount to where if it's not scored too badly, and there's just a little bit of brass showing because it's worn a little bit, you can sometimes get away with it. But whenever I see that, a head that's really scored bad inside that port, I'll replace it, because if I'm going to put a warranty on it or a guarantee, whatever, I want to make sure that there's no scoring and that customer's not going to have any problem with the pump before it goes out of here. Okay, so getting back, this little spring goes down inside. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Yeah. There's supposed to be another spring down inside of there that goes around, but that spring is missing completely. It's gone. So there's only one spring. That has to be there. Make sure that's not split or cracked. Put that back together so you can see the configuration. So that would go, the discharge valve would go down, and then that goes in, and then the port ring goes in. All right, so just remember that configuration. But in the diagrams that you can either get on YouTube or Google, you'll see the order in which these go. Okay. Yep. So that's the inside of the discharge manifold, and then these three baskets come out. And then there's some white Teflon seal washers that go around each one of those baskets, new ones. You want to replace those. So I've seen where the seal washer will be blown out of place and actually coming up out of this port. And then you get blow-by, water blow-by, and you won't get a good performance out of your pulse pump. So now that it's down to just basically the bare bones, this is why it takes 3.5 to 4.5 hours, because when you guys are getting your cat pumps, now there are some guys that didn't warrant having the cat pump repainting and all that, but those are few and far between. Usually the pumps I get are all ratted and looking just like that one, oil all over the place or rust or that sort of thing. But that's why it takes 3.5 to 4 hours, so it could be cleaned up, painted, given that time to dry, and then new stickers being applied, and then everything going back together as it should. So this is just a portion of it. We'll let it go for now. I'll clean up all these feet and make sure those are looking sharp right along with the cat pump. So the next time you see it, the pump will be all painted up and ready to be reassembled. There's primer. All right, continuing on with my project. So here's the kits. You'll get these from Butler. Now this would be a complete cat pump rebuild kit. All right, and these are the numbers. The valve, the flat valve, that's what FV stands for at the end here. FV covers the 280 all the way to the 430. This is a 435, so this is the pump kit, the valve kit you need, discharge valve. That part number there, 30024. This is a sleeve and seal kit for the 435, and it also carries a number of other pumps. 30312 sleeve and seal kit. And then the hot cup kit is that one right there, 30272 hot cup kit for the 280 and the 430, which we're working on, of course. And then these seal washers. You need these seal washers from Butler, as well as the brass spacer, or better known as a port ring. Okay, that's going to go in the port for the pulse pump. All right, so here, put this back up here. Now, the sleeve and seal kit, here are the seals, inlet seals. There's 3 of them. And what I've done is, I've got a 7/16 socket, long socket, and I've actually put this upside down here and used a hammer and tapped them out. These are already loose, so just wanted to show you 7/16 and make sure you're on the rubber part of the seal. Okay, so they're all out. This is all cleaned up and ready to go. Then you'll have three new ones, of course, in the sleeve and seal kit that I just showed you. And what I found is a 5/8. A 5/8 socket will actually fit around that seal nice, and you'll be able to press them in just using a vise, just like this. Now that little, you see that spring? That spring is going to go towards the water, okay? So if this is sitting up against the pump, like that, orientated up against the pump like this, that little spring is going to go towards the water. I'll get them all started just like that. Spring towards the water. Spring towards the water, just like that. Okay. You don't have to have a arbor press. That works great too, by the way, if you have one. Just want to push them in until they're seated without squashing them. Make sure they're all even as well. And that's it. They're all nice and even, and they're all squashed in and pressed in the way they're supposed to. So that part of the pump rebuild is done. These are the inlet seals for the 435 Butler cat pump. All right. And now these sleeves will go on the crossheads, along with these little cotter keys and these O-rings. And then these backup rings will go in there as well. So I'll get to that in a second. Okay, so here's the discharge manifold, and these little baskets that have the springs in them, they just pop right out. You need a screwdriver to help lift them out. We've got this one loose. Okay, so in there again, once you pull them out, just run your finger around in there, take a look and make sure that that inner wall is not all scored up. It's a little dirty, but it's not all scored up. So this is still a good candidate for a cat pump rebuild and the chemical injection system on the Butler working perfect when I'm done with the rebuild. Okay, so what I wanted to point out here too as well is that on the flat valve kit, you'll get 3 of these little baskets. You get 3 of these little baskets that go inside here. All right, but 2 of them have this little plug in the bottom, and the third one that operates the pulse pump does not. See that? Does not have a plug in the bottom, and it's open wider than, so if you were to pull this plug out, it's still wider than what this one is. So when you pull this out, this one, you have to retain that. Okay, you have to use this on inside the rebuild. So don't forget that. Okay, sorry my bench is such a mess, but try to focus on what we're doing here. Okay, so the Teflon seal washers that I showed in the earlier shot of it, these Teflon seal washers go around these 3 little baskets that go inside of the discharge manifold. Okay, so just put them up there, no rhyme or reason. Drop that in. Make sure that spring's down in there. right, so because when I started the video, we were missing a spring, the third basket has that spring, that helper spring. So I'll put that in there in a second. And so here's the small tiny spring that goes inside of the pulse pump manifold port. Make sure that's all the way down to the bottom, and then drop that other spring in. Okay, and then here's the valves. And then this top side of the valve just drops in. All right. And then the port ring, the all-important port ring. Let's see. Here's the old one versus the new one. The old one is worn a little bit. Not too bad, but I want to make sure that we have a good fresh start, so I'm putting a brand new one in. Port ring or a brass spacer is how it's listed through Butler. Now this is when I'll put my sleeves, my cylinders back on. Put a little bit of lube around that O-ring. The O-ring comes in the kit as well. There's 6 of those O-rings. You don't want to force them in because sometimes it squishes that O-ring out of place, and then when you put it together, you could actually cut it too. So all right, there's the discharge manifold ready to go, except for the fittings on the top. But this is all done. So I got that done. I got the inlet manifold ready to go with the new seals, new inlet seals. Those are all good to go. This is ready to go. And now I just have to get the cap pump, which I painted. I'll show you that here in a second. Nice and blue. Trying to find cap pump paint that matches the original. It's not really a needle in the haystack, but I've used this before on other cap pumps. I like the color, so that's what I'm going with. So that'll go on my bench, and I'll start installing the sleeves. All right, so bear with me. All right, continuing on a cap pump rebuild here. Reinstalled the clutch. That's good to go. And now I'm gonna install the sleeves. Okay, so these 3 little seal retainers, they go on first, all the way back. And they'll stop once I get these in. This will push them up against the back end. These little O-rings go around here. These come in the kit as well. Sleeve and seal kit. The first one, and slip it up over that collar. just like that. Okay, I just take some Ultra Lube white lithium grease. You can buy that anywhere. I don't even know where I got it. I had it so long. Oh, I got it at Harbor Freight. Everybody likes Harbor Freight. A 2-pack for like, I don't know, $10. Been working off the same tube for 3 years now. Okay, these sleeves, and it's not going to show up too much, I don't think, in the video, but these sleeves have a little step. And if you look real close inside there, you can maybe see it. But that step is going to go forward. All right, so look at it up in the light, and where you see that little step, make sure that that's going to go in that position. So I'll get it started. I get lithium grease around these O-rings and a little bit around that shaft. But when you spin it on, you want to twist it and push it on. It shouldn't be hard to do. I mean, you don't want to force it on. Same thing. Okay. All right, that's good. Nice and tight. These are the oil keepers. These keep the oil seals in place. I like to put that side up. See this? You can see the difference. I like to put that side up. And it's not important that they're in place right now, because once I put the head on, then I'll make sure that they're all in position. Stand by. All right, so now comes the inlet manifold. And then I'll try to position these so they're nice. They're loose right now. I can feel them spinning a little bit. My lock washer's on. Three 13 millimeter, where'd it go? There it is. I can't tell you how tight to make these. You want to tighten them up evenly, and then once they're snug, then just give it one more tweak on both sides. You don't want to snap it off. Now here's something about excuse me. These are spacers, okay, and then they're spacer retainers. This one came and it had no spacers on the outside here. So just remember, when you pull the discharge manifold off, you want to make sure that whatever spacers are on this side go back on this side, and same rule here. You want to put the same amount of spacers on each side So if there was 2 here, put 2 here and 2 here. Make sure they go right back the way they were. And a lot of video help as you're disassembling it, or pictures, goes a long ways at making sure you don't mess something up. All right, so got the inlet manifold on, it's tight. I've got my sleeves on, and so now we'll install the hot cup kit. So there's 6 more washers, cylinder washers, that comes in the hot cup kit, along with they also come in the valve kit too. So those are just extras. You won't need those. All right. So I mentioned earlier that the inlet valves can be flipped. And if you look really close, this is just a little dirty. It's not, there's nothing wrong with it. But if you look really close, this side has not been used at all. This side has been. Okay? So I'm going to take and clean it up a little bit. And I'll install it right here. One there. You can see the outer ring is a little shiny. That's where the cup is hitting. And this side does not have any wear to it whatsoever. I'll go on this side. Okay, before you throw the hot cup on, these little, I call them retainers. The schematic probably call them something completely different. Now that's what the hot cup kit rides on. Okay, so it's allowed to sit there and level out and find its center position. And this goes in towards